Lots of excitement in the Carolina Hurricanes camp these days. You know, the Canes continue to battle for top spot in the NHL overall. And when you look back at their play in December, man, that didn't seem possible. But here they are, playing great hockey and preparing for a long playoff run. Off the ice, the Canes have been busy too. General Manager Don Waddell and his team have gone on a signing spree. And this is big news for the Hurricanes. You know, the Canes have some outstanding prospects, and in fact, they were so deep that they could move some of those prospects in the recent deal at the trade deadline for Jake Guentzel. Vasily Ponomara, Cruz Lucius, a college prospect, and Finnish youngster Ville Koivunen were all sent to Pittsburgh as part of that deal. But the Canes felt they were deep enough to make that happen. And when we take a look at the cast that they have right now and the ones they're signing, you have to kind of believe that. So I thought we'd take a look at the recent signings, try to get a sense as to who those players are and how they might impact the Canes going forward. Let's get started. So first of all, I thought we'd talk about Scott Morrow. You know, I talked a little bit about Morrow, Jackson Blake, and of course Bradley Nadeau in regards to the Frozen Four competition that recently took place here in the U.S. They were in the preliminaries, but unfortunately, they didn't make it to the finals. But Morrow was one of the players I really wanted to talk about. You know, Morrow, he's 6'2", 194 pounds. He was a second-round pick for the Canes, 40th overall, a couple of years ago. And he's a player that, you know, was generally accepted to be in the range that the Canes drafted him. You look at some of these ratings, NHL Central Scouting had him at 39, Dauber at 22, McKean's at 59, and TSN Bob McKenzie had him at 36, Elite Prospects 52. These guys kind of saw him in that late first, early second round positioning, and the Canes feel they did well to get him at 40 overall. The book on Morrow, when he was drafted, Darren York had said, he's probably one of the most skilled offensive players in the draft, and that's not just defensemen. So he was quite impressed with the offensive upside that Scott Morrow was going to present. Scott's a dynamic offensive player who's consistently been among the top defensemen in college ranks. That was what Don Waddell had to say recently at the announcement of the signing. He had 6 goals, 24 assists for 30 points. You watch his action here. He's a guy that really controls play when he's on the ice. He's very calm. He's a guy that sees the ice very, very well. He's very creative on the ice. I think the big thing with Scott, he's going to have to continue to bulk up and, of course, continue to build his defensive play. In fact, he's been concentrating on that the last couple of years at UMASS. He talked about this recently and said, hey, you know, I really wanted to become a complete player on the defense, and he clearly has outstanding offensive capability, and he knew himself that he had to kind of grow that defensive side. And if you look at his first year with UMass, he was outstanding. He was a Rookie of the Year. He was an East Coast All-Star. He really did a lot of great things that opening year, and of course caught a lot of ice when he kicked off his career at UMass. So he's a guy that's continuing to build his career. He has had a game with the Canes so far, looked pretty good, did not look out of place. Again, he's a solid player. He checks in at 6'2", so he's a solid guy that with a little bit more weight and a little bit more defensive work, he's going to be an outstanding D player for the Hurricanes. And when you take a look at the Canes' defense going forward, and I think this is one of the reasons Morrow signed, is that the Canes are going to be losing some defensemen. There's no question with the upcoming unrestricted free agents they're going to be trying to re-sign. There's just no way they can bring back that complete defensive core. So he is going to have an opportunity for sure. And of course, following him shortly after, we're all excited to see Alexander Nikishin as well. So these two guys are looked upon as the future of the Canes Blue for the long term. And you can expect Morrow to be on the blue line next year, patrolling one of those spots for the Hurricanes. Great news to get Morrow on a 3-year deal. Let's talk about Jackson Blake. Blake, of course, was a finalist for the Hobey Baker Award. You know, Blake's a guy that, the ratings when they drafted Blake were all over the map. The Canes actually were able to draft him at 109 in the 4th round. And boy, I'll tell you, some folks had him at 52, some at 85, some even at 134. So it was all over the place, but the Canes feel they did well. Of course, the son of Jason Blake, who had had a long-term career in the NHL, and of course did very, very well as well. 5'11", 172. He's a guy that he can score. And when you take a look at what was said about him by Darren York, he's just incredibly smart. His 5-on-5 play is what really turned them on. His offense has been incredible. Don Waddell says he's an explosive playmaker, and he's played a key role for North Dakota. Now, North Dakota is one of the colleges in the U.S. that clearly has been a factory for top players in the NHL for many years. So great opportunity for him. 29 goals, 30 assists, 59 points in just 39 games. This guy had over 100 points in his 2 seasons with UND. The only other player to do that in the last 30 years was Zach Parise. So obviously, great company for Jackson Blake, and he's a player that we're looking forward to seeing in the Hurricanes and possibly as early as next season. Let's take a look at the final collegiate signing by the Hurricanes, and that was kind of an interesting one, Bradley Nadeau. Now, Nadeau, who's just 18 years old, he's going to turn 19 in May. Boy, he just came off an outstanding first season in Maine. Now, Nadeau is a guy that has elite offensive skill, and the Canes are very excited about him. They drafted him 30th overall, first round this last year. If we take a look at Nadeau, he's 5'10", 172 pounds. He's a guy that was rated 19th by North America Central Scouting for the draft. Dauber had him at 34, McKean's 27, 36 for Mackenzie, and Elite had him at 34. He's in the right range. Everybody thought he was going to be like late first round, early second round pick. He's just a guy that has elite offensive skill. We look at some of the words about him. Probably the best way to describe him is he just scores goals. This is Darren York talking about him. He had 19 goals, 27 assists for 46 points in Maine. Don Waddell said he's a dynamic forward with a powerful shot. So Nadeau is really known for his offense. Interestingly enough, Nadeau last year teamed up with his brother Josh, a couple of East Coast Canada players who had their first year with Maine, and both of them did extremely well. Going to be interesting to see where Josh heads up. A lot of rumors he might end up with the Hurricanes as well. But Bradley is a guy we really like looking at his video here. He's just a guy that can really put the puck in the net. And he's going to work on his defensive game. He's going to work on building his strength. Of course, he's just 18, turning 19, so he's got some time. And he'll play in the American Hockey League for the Hurricanes this coming year as well. So really excited to get Nadeau under a contract. I was kind of surprised the Canes did get him signed. I thought he'd go back to Maine for another year. But apparently Justin Williams had a lot to do with the signing of Nadeau, and they really wanted to get him into a Hurricanes situation where they could start to work closely with him to develop him over the next few years to be a part of the Hurricanes. And there's no question with his offensive skill and his skating and just the way he plays the game that he's going to have a long future with the Hurricanes. Great news to get Bradley Nadeau also on a 3-year deal. All three of these guys with their deals starting now, so that's kind of exciting. And they're with the Hurricanes, and they'll probably stay with them throughout the playoffs. And that's a great opportunity for them to also get a sense of what life in the bigs is really like. So it's great stuff to get Nadeau, and he's the third piece of this. Now, let's talk a little bit about another interesting signing, and that was Gleb Trikozov. Now, Trikozov is an interesting one. As you see here, 6'1", 192 pounds. He's a solid player, but he was picked in the second round, 60th overall in 2022. And this was a bit of a steal for the Hurricanes. A lot of folks had him in that first round. And you look at some of the ratings, Elite at 18, McKean's had him at 26, Craig Button at 33, and so on. A lot of folks had him way higher than the Canes got him, so they really got a steal here. Recognized for his offensive capability. Clearly a young player at just 19 years old, coming over to North America. This is exciting. And the last couple of years, mostly in the MHL, which is equivalent to the Ontario Hockey League in Canada, and this year also in the VHL. That would be like playing in the American Hockey League. And had a good start with them at a team called Omskia. As you see here, 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points. The word on him, when he was drafted, Darren York said he's a high-end offensive player, and that's for sure. The the way that folks have looked at this young man, he just has great offensive skill. And same thing with Waddell, saying he's a natural goal scorer who combines a high-level vision with a heavy shot. That's a nice combination for sure. The word on him is he's got to work on his defensive game, of course, typical for young players, and continue to get more strength. But he's got a lot of capability. He can skate. He's got great hands. He can do it all. We watched some of the video on Trikozov. It's going to be exciting as he comes over. He'll play in the American Hockey League this year as well with whatever team the Canes do have an affiliation with. We're still kind of waiting for that, as I talked about earlier. But I like Trikozov. I think he's going to be a great player. He can really move. He's got a great shot. And again, seeing some of these highlights that we've seen on Trikozov, you get a sense as to what this guy is going to bring to the table. So great signings for the Hurricanes. Again, a 3-year deal. His starts in September. So Trikozov, Nadeau, Morrow, and of course Jackson Blake, all under contract for the Hurricanes. So let's talk about the most surprising signing, and certainly one that caught a lot of us off guard, and that would be Finnish player Juha Jaaska. Now Jaaska is an interesting one. If we take a look here at some of the notes on Jaaska, he's 6 feet, 196 pounds, 26 years old for Jaaska. He's a guy that was not drafted. This is interesting. Now, he was in the ratings in 2016, which was one of his draft years. You can see he was rated way down. In fact, most folks didn't even rate him. I looked at several possible drafts, mock drafts, and so on. He doesn't show up anywhere. Now, an interesting thing about Jaaska is that he did end up playing in some tournaments, international tournaments. So he did an under-18 tournament, and that was alongside Yanni Kuokkanen, who, of course, had played with the Hurricanes previously. And as well, Jesse Puljujarvi was also in that tournament with Jaaska. And again, under 20 tournament, he was in there with Kuokkanen again. But looking at some other information on Jaaska, not much out there on this young man, for sure. He played in Liga this year with HIFK. He had 10 goals, 20 assists for 30 points in 57 games. Don Waddell was saying he's a veteran forward who brings energy and intensity to every shift. So he's a hard-working guy. He's like a third, fourth line kind of player. Not sure he's going to make the Canes. Could be an AHL guy that can bring some experience to that group and be ready for a call-up. But he may have a shot with the Canes. And you look at some of the other words that I saw in some of the write-ups about him: strong and speedy, two-way forward, plays without fear. And I think one of the key things here, he kills penalties very, very well. So he's just a hard-working guy. He can skate well. He gets the odd goal. And he, as we see some of his play here, you can see he's getting things done. He's getting in there. He's making things happen, and he's solid. He's kind of a solid player that is going to bring a little bit of experience as well, a little bit more mature in the signings that the Canes did this year as well. So I'm excited about Jaaska. I think he has some real potential, continuing that Finnish connection that we have with the Hurricanes, and I fully expect that he's going to get every opportunity in camp to make the Hurricanes this year. So lots of exciting signings for the Canes. Never a dull moment with the Hurricanes, of course, and we're getting ready for a very exciting playoff run coming up. And of course, thanks again for joining me here on stormTRacker, and we'll look forward to catching up with you real soon with all the latest news right here on stormTRacker.